The most powerful tool we have isn't technology, it isn't money, it isn't talent, it's the story we tell ourselves every single day. When people hear the word brainwash, they think of manipulation, control, something negative. But what if I told you that you are already brainwashed? Every day you wake up surrounded by messages telling you who you should be, what success looks like, and what's possible for you. We are constantly being programmed by our environment, by social media, by people who gave up on their own dreams. So the question isn't, am I brainwashed? The question is, who's doing the programming, the world or me? Most people don't realize this, but we're all being brainwashed. Every single day, not by some dark organization or hidden conspiracy, but by the world around us, by the things we see, the voices we listen to, and the stories we accept as truth. The question isn't whether you're being influenced. The question is, who's doing the influencing? Is it you, or is it everyone else? From the moment we wake up, we're surrounded by invisible instructions. They come from the phone we check before we even get out of bed, from the advertisements we scroll past, from the lives we compare ours to. These constant messages whisper what we should value, what success should look like, how fast we should move, what kind of person we should be. Over time, without even realizing it, we start to believe them, we internalize them, we live according to them. And we call it normal, but normal is just another word for someone else's version of the world. When I talk about brainwashing yourself for success, I'm not talking about control. I'm talking about awareness. Because the moment you become aware of how much of your life is running on someone else's programming, you gain the power to reprogram it. You start to see the subtle ways you've been guided to think small, to fear risk, to stay within lines that someone else drew. We don't choose the first ideas we're exposed to, we're born into them. They're handed down from parents, teachers, media, culture. They shape what we believe is possible long before we get the chance to test it. For example, many people grow up believing that success means having money, status, or recognition. But ask yourself, who decided that definition? Did you, or did you inherit it? Most of us live according to someone else's definition of success. We chase careers we don't love, to buy things we don't need, to impress people who don't even notice. We call it ambition, but sometimes it's just unconscious obedience. Here's the truth. Your brain doesn't care who does the programming, it just learns through repetition. Whatever you expose it to over and over again, it starts to believe. That's how habits are formed, that's how identities are built. And that's how dreams are either made or destroyed. Think about this. If you keep feeding your mind stories of limitation, people like me can't do that, it's too late, I'm not good enough, your brain begins to treat those statements as facts. It doesn't argue. It simply follows the script. The tragedy is that most people never realize they're reading from a script they didn't write. The great leaders, the ones who truly succeed, they've learned to question the script. They've learned to pause and ask, who told me that? Why do I believe that? They don't accept every message as truth. They analyze, they challenge, they rewrite. Because they understand that the quality of your thoughts determines the quality of your life. When I say you're already brainwashed, I mean your environment has already shaped your sense of what's possible. If you grow up surrounded by people who tell you that success is rare, you'll believe it's rare. If you surround yourself with people who tell you that growth is constant, that learning never stops, that failure is feedback, then success starts to look inevitable. The programming changes, it's the same mind, the same brain, just a different input. The question is, what are you feeding it? What kind of information, what kind of energy, what kind of people are you allowing into your mental space every day? Because everything you consume is a form of programming. Every conversation, every post, every headline is teaching your brain something about the world and about yourself. If you want to brainwash yourself for success, start by filtering your inputs. Don't just guard your time, guard your mind. Pay attention to the thoughts that play on repeat when you're alone. Are they empowering or limiting? Are they yours, or did someone else plant them there? Once you start noticing, you can't unsee it. You begin to recognize how often your actions are driven by fear instead of purpose. You realize how often your choices are made to please others instead of fulfilling yourself, and that realization is powerful. Because awareness is the first step to freedom. When you reclaim control of your mind, you reclaim control of your future. You stop living reactively and start living intentionally. You stop letting the world program you, and you start programming yourself with belief, with discipline, with purpose. And that's what this idea is really about. It's not about manipulation or blind positivity. It's about choosing your influences before they choose you. It's about writing your own story instead of letting society hand you one. Because if you don't brainwash yourself for success, the world will brainwash you for mediocrity. And between the two, I'd rather be the one holding the remote. Unlearning is one of the hardest things a human being can do. We grow up thinking that learning is the key to progress, that the more we add, the better we become. But what no one teaches us is that sometimes addition isn't the answer. Sometimes the path to growth isn't about collecting more information. It's about letting go of the wrong information. To truly succeed, we have to unlearn the things that no longer serve us. Every belief you hold today was learned from somewhere. You didn't wake up one morning and decide what to believe about success, love, money, or happiness. You absorbed it from your parents, your teachers, your culture, your experiences. That's how human beings work. We're shaped by what we see and hear. We copy, we adapt, we internalize. It's not good or bad, it's natural. But the danger comes when we never stop to question those beliefs. We live in a world where people confuse repetition with truth. If you hear something often enough, you start to believe it's real. You need a certain degree to be successful. You have to be extroverted to lead. You can't fail if you want to make it. These phrases sound like advice, but in reality, they are invisible cages. They keep you walking the same path as everyone else, even if that path doesn't lead where you want to go. Unlearning starts when you pause and ask, "Who told me that?" That one question has the power to break decades of conditioning. Because once you start questioning, you realize how much of your thinking isn't actually yours. You begin to see how many of your choices were made to fit in, not to stand out. You recognize that some of your goals aren't really your goals, they're borrowed dreams. They sound good on paper, they impress people, but deep down, they don't fulfill you. Success, real success, isn't about living someone else's story better than they did. It's about writing your own. But here's the problem, it's hard to unlearn something when it's comfortable. Familiarity feels safe. Even when it limits us, we cling to it, because stepping outside that comfort zone means facing uncertainty. It means admitting that maybe we were wrong, and that's uncomfortable for the ego. But here's the paradox. The very beliefs that protect you are often the ones that hold you back. I'm just not good at that. I'm not the type of person who can take risks. That's not possible for someone like me. These are not truths. They're just old stories you've told yourself so many times they started to feel like facts. The people who truly grow, who evolve beyond the ordinary, are the ones who have the courage to question their own programming. They are willing to say, maybe there's another way. They're willing to trade certainty for discovery. And that's what unlearning really is. It's not forgetting what you know. It's being open to knowing differently. When you start to unlearn, the world opens up. You begin to see opportunities where you once saw obstacles. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" and start asking, "What would happen if I tried?" You move from fear to curiosity. And curiosity is the foundation of all progress. We live in an age where information is everywhere, but wisdom comes from subtraction. It's the ability to sift through the noise and keep only what's true for you, and that takes reflection. It takes silence. It takes the discipline to slow down long enough to hear your own thoughts again. So many people chase success without ever defining it for themselves. They live their entire lives pursuing someone else's version of achievement, a version shaped by media, by social norms, by comparison. And then they wonder why, even after achieving so much, they still feel empty. The answer is simple: because success that isn't aligned with your truth will always feel hollow. To unlearn is to return to yourself. It's to strip away the layers of expectation and rediscover who you were before the world told you who to be. That's where your real potential lies, not in becoming more, but in becoming authentic. And once you begin that process, once you start questioning, the change is irreversible. You can't go back to being unaware. You can't unsee what you now understand. You'll start to notice how many people are living on autopilot, chasing goals that don't make them happy, repeating beliefs that limit them, playing roles that don't fit. And you'll realize that the most radical thing you can do in a programmed world is to think for yourself. So unlearn the fear, unlearn the comparison, unlearn the noise, create space for your own voice to emerge. Because the mind can't be rewired if it's full of old code. You can't program new success beliefs while still running on outdated definitions of who you are. When you unlearn what doesn't serve you, you don't lose yourself, you finally meet yourself, and that's where the real journey to success begins. Words are powerful, not because they sound nice or because they fill space, but because they shape the way we think. Every word you speak, especially the ones you say to yourself, becomes a quiet instruction to your mind. It's programming. The language you use defines the world you experience. That's why learning to speak the language of success isn't about sounding positive. It's about training your brain to see possibility where it once saw limitation. Think about how many times a day you talk to yourself. Most of those conversations happen silently in the background. You miss a goal and tell yourself, "I'm not good enough." You see someone else doing well and whisper, "I could never do that." You face a challenge and think, "I'm not ready." These thoughts might feel harmless because they're small, but repetition turns them into belief, and belief turns into behavior. Your brain doesn't know the difference between truth and repetition. It believes what it hears most often. That's how habits form, that's how confidence builds, and that's how identity solidifies. If you keep telling yourself that you're bad at something, your brain will start collecting proof. It'll notice every mistake, every failure, every moment that confirms your story. You won't even see the times you did well because your mind isn't looking for them. It's filtering the world to match your internal narrative. Now imagine changing the script. Instead of "I can't," you say "I'm learning." Instead of "I failed," you say "I'm improving." The situation doesn't change, your interpretation does, and that single shift changes everything. It tells your brain to focus on growth instead of limitation. It rewires your perception. It teaches your mind to look for evidence of progress. This isn't about blind optimism or pretending everything is perfect. It's about being intentional with your inner dialogue. The way you talk to yourself determines how you respond to life. If you constantly feed your mind fear, it will find reasons to be afraid. If you feed it courage, it will find ways to move forward. Successful people aren't necessarily smarter or luckier. They've just learned to manage their internal language better. They speak to themselves in a way that reinforces belief instead of doubt. When they fail, they don't say, "I'm not good enough." They say, "That didn't work, let's try again." It's subtle, but that small difference builds resilience, because the language of success isn't about perfection, it's about perseverance. You see, the way we speak reflects what we value. When we use words like "I can't" or "I'm stuck," we reveal how little faith we have in ourselves. But when we start using words like "I will," "I'm learning," or "I'm growing," we create a new standard, one where mistakes aren't signs of weakness, but signs of effort. There's a famous saying, "Your words create your world." It's true. The environment inside your mind becomes the foundation for everything you build outside of it. You cannot build a strong life with weak words. You cannot create a successful path while constantly undermining yourself in private. Success begins with self-talk. Try this for a moment. Pay attention to how you speak when you're frustrated, when you fail, or when you feel behind. Would you talk that way to someone you love? Would you tell your best friend you'll never get it right? Probably not, and yet, that's how most people talk to themselves daily. If you wouldn't say it to someone you care about, don't say it to yourself. Changing your language is uncomfortable at first. It feels fake. You might say, "I'm capable," and immediately hear a voice in your head that says, "No, you're not." That's normal. That voice isn't truth. It's just old programming fighting to stay alive. Keep repeating the new story until it becomes louder than the old one. That's how brainwashing works, through repetition and reinforcement. And remember, the words you use don't just affect how you feel, they affect what you do. When you say, "I can't," you give your brain permission to stop trying. When you say, "I'll figure it out," your brain starts looking for solutions. Words don't just describe your reality, they direct it. The most successful people in the world have one thing in common. They speak possibility into existence. They talk about vision, purpose, and growth even when things are uncertain. They choose language that inspires action rather than fear. Because they understand that what you say consistently, you eventually become. So, start small. Replace criticism with curiosity. Replace defeat with learning. Replace "I have to" with "I get to." Each of those shifts rewires your relationship with effort, responsibility, and growth. Over time, your brain starts to see success not as something rare or distant, but as something natural, something that belongs to you. The truth is, your words are your first tool of creation. Before any goal becomes real, it exists as language, as something you tell yourself you can do. That's where success begins. Not with luck, not with talent, but with the simple, consistent decision to speak to yourself as if you already believe in the person you're becoming. Motivation is a beautiful thing, but it's unreliable. It burns bright for a moment, and then it fades. It's like a spark that ignites you for a few days, maybe a few weeks, and then disappears when things get hard. The truth is, no one stays motivated all the time. Not the most successful people, not the most disciplined ones, not even the ones who seem unstoppable. The difference between people who succeed and people who don't isn't motivation, it's structure. It's the systems they've built to keep moving forward long after the spark has gone out. Most people wait to feel motivated before they act. They think, "When I feel ready, I'll start." But that's not how progress works. Action doesn't follow motivation, motivation follows action. The moment you begin doing the work, no matter how small, something inside you shifts. You create momentum, you prove to yourself that you can, but to make that process repeatable, you need systems, structures that make success a natural outcome, not a lucky event. Think about your daily environment. What do you see, hear, and experience every day? Because everything around you is either moving you closer to your goals or pulling you further away. The books you read, the people you spend time with, the content you consume, all of it is shaping your behavior in ways you might not even notice. If you're constantly surrounded by negativity, comparison, or laziness, it becomes nearly impossible to sustain progress. But if you intentionally design your environment to reflect growth, you make success easier. You make it the default. That's the essence of building systems. You're not leaving your future to chance or emotion. You're creating conditions where the right actions become automatic. For example, if you want to work out regularly, don't rely on willpower. Make it easy. Keep your shoes by the door. Go at the same time every day. Find a partner who holds you accountable. You're not depending on inspiration, you're building infrastructure. This is what successful people understand deeply. They don't chase motivation. They design systems that align with their vision. They know discipline isn't about being rigid, it's about creating habits that support their purpose. Every routine, every ritual, Every structure in their day exists to serve something bigger than convenience. You see, we've been taught to glorify motivation, the fiery speeches, the adrenaline, the excitement. But real growth is quiet, it's repetition. It's the consistency to show up when you don't feel like it. Systems allow you to do that because they remove decision fatigue. When you have a system, you don't wake up wondering what to do, you already know. You don't negotiate with your excuses because the structure is already there to guide you. Simon Sinek often talks about purpose being the foundation of everything. Systems are how you live that purpose every day. They're the bridge between your why and your how. Without them, your vision remains a dream. With them, it becomes a process, and a process you can trust, even on the days you doubt yourself, is far more powerful than bursts of motivation that come and go. The beauty of systems is that they build identity. When you commit to a daily structure, you stop thinking in terms of goals and start thinking in terms of who you are becoming. You are no longer someone who's trying to be consistent. You are consistent. You're not someone who's hoping to succeed. You live like a successful person. Systems turn effort into identity, and over time, something remarkable happens. What once felt like discipline becomes normal. You stop fighting your habits because they start serving you instead of resisting you. You don't need to push yourself every day. Your system pulls you forward. That's the secret no one talks about. The truly successful people don't rely on motivation because they've built lives that make their goals unavoidable. If you want to brainwash yourself for success, don't just think positive thoughts, create positive structures. Make your environment a reflection of your intentions. Surround yourself with people who elevate your standards. Fill your space with reminders of your purpose. Remove distractions that dilute your focus, because the truth is, your habits are stronger than your emotions. When your habits are designed for growth, even your bad days move you forward. We often underestimate the small things, the morning routine, the reading habit, the few minutes of reflection before bed. But those small systems compound. They shape the rhythm of your life, and over months and years, that rhythm becomes your reality. Success doesn't come from a single moment of inspiration. It comes from hundreds of small, repeated choices, supported by systems that don't fail when your motivation does. So stop waiting to feel ready, stop depending on emotion, start building structures that make the right path the easiest one to follow. Because when your environment, your routines, and your habits all align with your purpose, you don't need to push yourself to succeed, you simply live in a way that makes success inevitable. Every great journey begins with a reason, a why. Without it, even the strongest people eventually burn out. You can have talent, ambition, resources, and motivation, but if you don't have a clear purpose, none of it lasts. Because the moment things get difficult, and they always do, your mind starts to ask, what's the point? And if you can't answer that question with clarity and conviction, you'll quit. People often think success is about strategy or skill. They obsess over the how to build a business, how to get fit, how to stay disciplined. But the truth is, how only matters when the why is strong. The most successful people don't wake up driven every day because they have a perfect plan. They wake up driven because they know exactly why their plan matters. Their reason gives meaning to the work, energy to the effort, and direction to their struggle. Your why is the emotional anchor that keeps you steady when the waves hit. It's not a slogan or a motivational phrase. It's the deep, personal reason you do what you do, something rooted in who you are and what you believe. It's the difference between waking up for a paycheck and waking up for a purpose. The first exhausts you, the second fulfills you. Simon Sinek often says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. That's true not just in business, but in life. Your brain works the same way. If your mind doesn't buy into why you're pursuing something, it won't fully commit to it. You'll always find excuses, always negotiate with yourself, always stop just short of greatness. But when your why is powerful, it becomes impossible to ignore. It pulls you forward even through pain. Think of the last time you worked hard for something that truly mattered to you. Maybe it was helping someone you love. Maybe it was creating something you believed in. In those moments, you didn't need external motivation. You didn't have to force yourself to try again. You just did, because the reason was bigger than the discomfort. That's the power of a why. It transforms effort from a burden into a privilege. The problem is, most people never take the time to define theirs. They chase goals without understanding what those goals represent. They say they want success, but they can't explain why it matters. So they get the promotion and still feel empty. They reach the milestone and feel nothing. That's what happens when you pursue what you think you should want, instead of what truly drives you. Finding your why isn't easy. It requires honesty, sometimes brutally so. You have to ask yourself uncomfortable questions. What do I really care about? What do I want my work to mean? What legacy am I trying to build? And you have to be patient enough to listen for the answers, because your why doesn't shout, it whispers. It shows up in the things that move you, the problems that anger you, the moments that make you feel alive. Once you find it, everything changes. Your decisions become clearer, your priorities realign. You stop wasting time chasing everything that looks shiny and start focusing on what feels right. The noise of the world, the opinions, the comparisons, the pressure fades because your direction becomes internal. You're not driven by approval anymore. You're driven by meaning. And here's the beautiful part. When your why is strong enough, your mind starts to work for you. It looks for ways to make the vision real. It pushes you to keep going even when you're tired. It becomes your internal compass. That's how you brainwash yourself for success, not by forcing positivity, but by aligning your thoughts and actions with something that matters deeply to you. People with a strong why are different. They don't need to be told to stay consistent. They don't measure success by how easy something feels. They measure it by how aligned it feels. They're not chasing happiness, they're chasing purpose, and purpose gives them endurance. It gives them strength that talent alone can't provide. When your life is guided by a clear why, failure doesn't define you, it refines you. Every setback becomes part of the story, not the end of it. You stop seeing challenges as barriers and start seeing them as necessary steps toward what you're building. Because when you believe deeply in the reason behind your effort, no obstacle feels permanent. So if you ever feel lost, unmotivated, or stuck, stop looking for new tactics and start looking inward. Ask yourself why you began in the first place. Ask yourself who you're doing it for, what it means, and why it matters. Because once you reconnect with that reason, your energy returns, your direction sharpens, and your courage grows. Success without a why feels empty, but success with purpose, that changes you. That's what gives life meaning. Because in the end, the goal isn't just to achieve something great. It's to become someone who wakes up every day knowing exactly why it's worth it. Every day, you make choices that shape who you become. Most of them are small, almost invisible. The thoughts you allow, the people you listen to, the content you consume, the habits you repeat. Over time, those small choices build the architecture of your mind. They determine what you see as possible, what you believe you deserve, and what you expect from yourself. That's why success isn't an accident, it's the result of intentional programming. You can't control every circumstance, but you can control what you feed your mind with. And that's the essence of brainwashing yourself for success, choosing your programming before the world chooses it for you. Human beings are shaped by repetition. Whatever you hear, think, and feel consistently becomes your default setting. If you grow up hearing that life is hard, that success is rare, that people like you don't get lucky, your brain accepts that as truth. It builds a filter, a lens that colors everything you experience. You'll notice evidence that supports those beliefs and ignore anything that challenges them. That's not because you're weak, it's because your brain is wired for consistency. It wants your reality to match your beliefs, even if those beliefs are limiting. But here's the beauty of it. You can rewire that system. You can train your brain to look for growth instead of fear, opportunity instead of scarcity. You can choose to program thoughts that build confidence instead of doubt. It's not magic, it's discipline. It's the daily decision to feed your mind messages that serve your future, not your past. The problem is, most people never take responsibility for their mental programming. They assume their beliefs are facts. They say, "That's just how I am," or "That's how life works." But those statements are just the echoes of old stories, stories written by parents, teachers, society, and culture. When you start to see that, you realize something liberating. You don't have to keep believing everything you were taught. You can question it. You can replace it. You can reprogram it. Imagine your mind as software. Every thought, experience, and word you consume adds code. Some of that code helps you run better. Some of it slows you down. If you never update your system, it becomes outdated, full of bugs and limiting beliefs that crash every time you try to grow. But if you take control, if you rewrite the code consciously, you can build a new operating system, one designed for confidence, growth, and purpose. That's what it means to choose your programming. It's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about deciding what kind of thoughts get to live in your head. You can choose to believe that every failure is feedback. You can choose to believe that effort compounds. You can choose to believe that you are capable, even when you don't yet have proof. Because belief isn't a reward you earn after success. It's the foundation you lay before it. Simon Sinek often reminds us that optimism isn't ignoring reality. It's believing in the possibility of a better one. Choosing your programming works the same way. You're not denying the challenges. You're deciding that those challenges don't define you. You're choosing growth over fear, clarity over chaos, meaning over noise. Of course, this isn't easy. It takes consistency. The world will always try to reprogram you back into comfort, to make you doubt yourself, to make you fit in, to make you quiet your dreams. Every advertisement, every social post, every comparison tries to tell you who you should be. If you're not deliberate, you'll end up living someone else's script. But when you consciously choose your inputs, the books you read, the people you admire, the conversations you allow, you begin to reclaim your narrative. It's not enough to just think positively for a few minutes a day. You have to build an environment that reinforces your new beliefs. Surround yourself with people who challenge you to grow, who remind you of your potential, who hold you accountable to your purpose. Fill your space with reminders of what you're working toward. Remove the influences that pull you backward. The more consistent your environment, the stronger your new programming becomes. Over time, something subtle but powerful happens. Your brain begins to expect success. It stops treating growth as a surprise and starts seeing it as normal. You start to carry yourself differently. You make bolder choices. You stop asking, "Can I?" and start asking, "How will I?" That's when you know you've reprogrammed yourself, when your default mindset is progress, not fear. Choosing your programming is choosing your future, because thoughts become beliefs, beliefs become actions, and actions become results. Every day you have the chance to shape that sequence. You can let the world decide what you believe, or you can decide for yourself. And here's the truth. There's nothing more empowering than realizing you are the author of your own mind. You don't have to wait for confidence, you can create it. You don't have to wait for opportunities, you can attract them. You don't have to wait for permission, you can give it to yourself. When you take responsibility for your programming, success stops being a mystery. It becomes a habit, the natural outcome of the thoughts, beliefs, and choices you've trained your mind to make. Because the most powerful kind of brainwashing isn't about control, it's about freedom. The freedom to think, believe, and become the person you were always meant to be. So here's the truth, you don't need to be a genius. You don't need to be born into privilege. You just need to become your own programmer. Brainwash yourself to believe you can. Brainwash yourself to act even when you're scared. Brainwash yourself to see possibilities where others see limits. Because the most powerful kind of brainwashing isn't about control, it's about choice. You get to choose your thoughts. You get to choose your beliefs, and by doing so, you get to choose your future. So, start today and write the code for your success.